Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro RPG. The end of the week, the end of another poll, and by the slimmest of slimmest margins, the winner is Castle Falkenstein. Now, this is going to be a review of the PDF, so we're going to be doing that on the computer desktop. We'll go over to that in just a wee second, and I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel-related stuff and some other poll-related stuff. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who this week I have been told are never fooled by mimics masquerading as chests. And that's because these guys are incredibly clever, incredibly wise, and incredibly generous. And their efforts make all of this so much easier to do, because I know I can rely on them supporting the channel, and their efforts are so much appreciated. Now if you'd like to join them and help support the channel, and I sure wish you would, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, or you'd like to gain access to one of the other levels of patronage we've got, then there's a Patreon in the description down below. If you check it out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at Castle Falkenstein. So, this is Castle Falkenstein, which came out from our Talsorian games in 1994. Now, this is a game back in the mid-90s I used to pick up on a regular occasion. And I would look at it, and I really kind of wanted it, because our Talsorian games did cyberpunk, so I knew they produced good quality games. And I was heavily into steampunk. I'd read The Difference Engine, the novel by William Gibson and Bruce Sterling, and I'd loved that setting. And now it's won a poll and I'm getting a chance to read through it. This isn't quite what I expected. I expected it to be pretty much straight Victorian, perhaps with alternate history stuff going in, where steam technology had changed things, so the timeline was a bit different. But it's not even that. It's steam fantasy with a strange wraparound story, because there are the fairy courts and things involved, so there's a heavy level of magic involved in the world, as well as obviously the way that has changed Europe in this alternate setting of the Victorian age. Also, it has a very interesting wraparound story that the game and the background were sent through to Mike Pondsmith, who runs our Talsorian games, by a friend of his who is a computer game graphic designer, who had gone on holiday to Europe and been dragged through to this alternate history version. So the setup of the world is him documenting the world he has ended up in, and the game rules part of it is a game he invented for the lords and ladies of the noble houses in this alternate setting, where they could play different characters within the world. Basically, he'd written a role-playing game for this fantasy world, written up the background that he discovered himself in, sent it through to Mike Pondsmith, who published it. It's an absolutely fascinating and weird setup that it's from the point of view of somebody from the modern world. But I suppose all books are written from the point of view of somebody from the modern world. It just has this slightly strange framing device. Anyway, going inside, the artwork is absolutely lovely. The first part of the book is lots of colour plates. I'll move through. We've got a contents page. Always started with the package. So Mike Pondsmith talking about he received a package which has all these drawings. It was from a friend of his, Thomas Edward Olam. There was a thick wad of yellow legal pad notes, antique vellum sheets, and Bristol board drawings. All that remains of the brilliant computer game artist who vanished over 2 years ago while on a supposedly uneventful European vacation. It warns us that it's not a typical role-playing game. It starts off with the background and then moves on to the rules. Dear Mike, I'm not dead. Now we've got that cleared up, and it explains what happened. You know, he's ended up meeting the Illuminati, the swashbuckling head of the Royal Secret Service, and the High King of the Faerie. I've met Queen Victoria, Abraham Lincoln, and Captain Nemo. Last week I got into a long conversation with Sherlock Holmes. Tonight I had dinner with a dragon, and I was not the main course. It's setting up that this person's gone through this, and it's a strange fantasy world where lots of literary characters are real, so Sherlock Holmes, Captain Nemo, and they intermingle with real characters like Queen Victoria, Abraham Lincoln, and with total fantasy ones, dragons and the fairy court. So we've got what happened to him, how he got kidnapped, what world he ends up in, a map of this alternate Europe, talking about the different places. He was kidnapped by Morlan and Oberon, two inhabitants of the alternate Earth, which I have been shanghaied to, the place I call New Europa. Carry on through, we've got Castle Falkenstein, a place he kind of created by sorcery in one night. Tom's map of the known portions of the castle. Talks through that it's in a middle new European country called Bayern, also known as Moravia to our English speakers. A map of Bayern. Introduces different people, different characters. So we've got Colonel Tarheim, the garrison commander of Castle Falkenstein, Rhyme, a dwarf mad scientist, the Mad King, King Ludwig II of Bayern, the Iron Chancellor, the Unseelie Court and the Adversary. Bismarck wants to rule the world. The nations, the Kingdom of Bayern, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and a more detailed map. The Second Empire of France, the British Empire, Prussia, the Russian Empire. History with a Falkensteinian twist. The Falkenstein world is a weird place, so obviously there's magic involved in it here. We've got the history of the alternate world, a walk around it, so introducing what like society is, with the age of steam, medicine, weapons and warfare. A world where fact and fiction meet, as I said, so there's real characters and there's fictional characters both walking the streets at the same time. Selected personages, so we've got Charles Babbage, the maker of the analytical engine, Lewis Carroll, John Carter, Charles Darwin, Vlad Dracula. So mixing all these fantasy characters in a similar way to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie, mixed up some real characters with fictional ones. It's a world of high intrigue, secret agents and secret societies with mad scientists and masterminds. Different megalomaniacs, steampunk science, and it's showing a sort of steam-powered vehicle here, perhaps some kind of tank. An age of weird innovation. Steam tech, anacrotech, and gadgetech. Different examples of it. Deadly dangers. We've got steam mage weapons. Villains, riffraff and scoundrels, and not all of them are human. So we introduce the fairy host, different types of fairies. The lesser fairies, the bogies, the brownies, different animals, fetches, kobolds, leprechauns, nymphs, pukas, pixies. We've got the greater fairy, forest women, haunts, lake ladies, mermaids and mermen, nature spirits, giants, selkies, spectres, water demons and vampires. We've got the high fairy, the fairy veil, what hides the world of the fairy from the world of man. But not everything is battles and balrogs. It's an age of great cities. So it's mixing the Victorian age with this world of magical conflict, with all these monsters and creatures, with advancing technology and society. So we've got types of horses here, trains, ships and automotives, dressing the part, the Queen's English, the ladies of Falkenstein, an age of glamour and sophistication in society. Social orders, flashing blades and midnight jewels. So we're introducing that it's a sort of cultured society, but one where we have still duels going on. It's still high action. Affairs of honour, honour and virtue, magical power and sorcery. How magic works, I think. We've got Steam Age sorcery, mentioning J.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and other fantasy things. Sorcerous orders of New Europa. And dragons, introducing those. Talking about how dragons exist within society, their families, how they mate, etc. And then we've got the Great Game. The way that all the European nations are working against one another, and they're using the steampunk technology, and they're using the magic from the fairy kingdom. And probably using dragons as well. against a revolution of steam and steel. So people are working against this advancing technology, how that's changing the world. We've got the Steam Lords of Britain, councils of war to gain a dragon ally. Just so much going on, and beautiful colour plates here. Creatures of Faerie, secret weapons, the lost notebook of Leonardo da Vinci, the engines of sorcery. Just detailing out this world with lovely colour plates. We've got the Wild Hunt, Dwarven Rescue, delicate negotiations, the dwarf holds across Europe, mainly to the south, although there are a couple up here, Nord holds and Norway. Looks more like Denmark to me on that map. Soldiers of the Steam Age, armies. Uniforms, we've got secret weapons including steam zeppelins. The Verne cannon, so Jules Verne technology. Navies, because of course navies were so important in the Victorian era. The Aero Navy, the Aftermath of War, Endgame. And then we're more than halfway through it, and on page 130 out of 226-ish pages, and we're moving on to the rules of the game, the great game itself. And this is where it goes to black and white plates. We've gone through all the colour plates, now we're on to black and white, but the artwork's still very serviceable. We're into the more technical part of it. So, the Prince and I write the great game. Talking about how that came together, entering the great game, terms you'll need to know in the Victorian literary tradition. Now, one of the interesting elements of the game itself is it does not use dice, it uses playing cards. I will do a rules breakdown on this as soon as I can find a way of randomly generating playing cards for my examples. So it might be a couple of weeks before I get around to do that. But it's an interesting system, and it's not built around as much high action. This is a game more of political intrigue. It's far more of storytelling than dice rolling. Props of Victorian fiction. So getting into the tone of Victorian fiction, how Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, etc. wrote, and how their stories link into a Steam Age story. The building blocks of your story. Location, cuts, heroes and villains. Dramatic characters, how to create them. And we've got a few examples. So an adventuress, an anarchist, a brownie, a calculation engineer, a consulting detective, a dashing hussar, I have no idea, Dimodane? Diplomats, dragon lords, dwarf craftsmen, explorers, fairy lords or ladies, gentlemen thieves, gentleman or gentle lady, inventors, journalists, mad scientists, masterminds, noble men, noble women, performers, physicians, pixies, rogues, scientists, secret agents, soldiers of fortune, steam engineers, wizards and writers. And that's not all. You can create anything you want. These are just examples. And they've got different things. You know, their strong suits for a writer is they're charismatic. They've got connections and education. Their possessions, a life preserver or cane, several notebooks with writings, typewriter, or an Abercrombie's automatic recorder, lots of pens. So far so good. What do you use your diary for? So the diary questions to flesh out your character, what your name is, where do you come from, what's your physique, what was your youth and childhood like, to detail the background. And we've got an example one here, the memoirs of Captain André Le Corbusier. I wish I could pronounce things sometimes. What are your virtues, your vices? What's your style? Are you dashing or demure? What do you like or dislike? What really matters to you? You stand with me or stand against? Love, ambition. What are you good at, poor at, exceptional at? And last, now you go on to tell your story. Now you've created your character. We've got typical new European abilities, athletics, comeliness, connections. Just a list of abilities, skills. Improving your lot. So, how to improve your character. A price list of different things. So if you want to buy chicken, some poultry, it's 30 pence. Hosting a Steam Age adventure entertainment, running adventures. So it talks you through that, or the games mastering stuff. The Games Master is called the host in this. I've expressed that I don't like that, but we've got these host characters, so basically non-player characters. And we've got things like Lewis Carroll, John Carter. I'm sure... Well, there's the Invisible Man. I'm sure Dracula's in here somewhere. We have a description of dragon characters. You can play as a dragon, although they are rare, so it's suggested that you definitely don't allow the full party to play dragons. But if somebody is going to play a dragon, they are going to be extremely powerful. We've got dwarves. We've got fairies. And the Games Master's Guide to the Fairy. Desperate Endeavours. How to write the adventures. Now... The dramatis personae in order of appearance. The cast of the novel is revealed. The different chapters. How to do quick maps. Game mechanics. So how it works. Blazing guns, flashing blades, heroic feats and daring do. Your fortune deck, stacking the deck, your fortune hand, etc. Heroic feats. Because, even though, as I said, it is a game where there's going to be lots of social activity going on, lots of role-playing as you're interacting with the diplomatic courts and dealing with people of different social standing. So lots of role-playing going on. It is a game of daring-do and heroics. So there's going to be lots of sword play, lots of swinging through windows, being generally dashing and heroic. Different feats, combat, a special kind of feat. Continuing through, engines of war, so different vehicles. The art of the duel, to do cinematic swordplay. We've got sorcery, which is another kind of duel, and then detailing role-playing the arcane arts of the Steam Age, so how to become a wizard, how to use all that, lore books, which are involved in European sorcery. What else we got? Sample artifacts. The Blade of Finn McCool. The Ring of Light and Shadow. So different magical items, basically. Infernal devices, engines of destruction, and astounding inventions. So it's not just about having equipment that you buy. Because you're at the blazing white-hot edge of innovation, but in the Victorian age, it's all about creating new steam technology. You know, you'll get inventors developing things which will change the path of civilization, swing the balance in favour of one group or another. And the players themselves will be creating new items to use. So we've got constructing steam tech inventions here, creating your own gadget techs, you know, air bottles, caltrops, etc. Building amazing steam age vehicles, creating infernal weapons, astounding engines and formulations. And involving magic in that. So you're not just creating steam tech, but you're involving magic and enhancing things beyond. Like clockwork, a beginning adventure entertainment. So you're in Vienna, the city of secrets. Got adventure settings. Falkenstein bibliography. We're getting towards the end. Index, where to find things, and the back cover. Spellnapped, when computer game designer Tom Olam found himself sorcerously shanghaied by a rogue wizard and a Faerie Lord, little did he suspect he would soon become the pivotal force in the struggle to control an alternative Victorian universe. But before the deadly game could end, he would first have to battle gigantic Landfortresses, outwit dragons, romance a beautiful adventuress, and defeat the evil legions of a dark court determined to destroy him at all costs. Then maybe, just maybe, he could find a way home. It's a novel, it's a game, it's both. It's Castle Falkenstein, an adventure journey, an amazing journey into another universe just a few steps away from our own, a place where dragons and steampower rule the skies, Faerie Lords duel atop the battlements, and where forces of wizardry and magic meet the gaslight streets of Victorian age. But with Castle Falkenstein, the story never ends, as you take up the sabre and spell to adventure in a distant world on the other side of the mysterious fairy veil. A world of swashbuckling fantasy, high romance, and magical technology. The world of Castle Falkenstein. So that's Castle Falkenstein. It's steampunk, but with this extra level onto it, with a wrapped story around it. Now, the wrapped story I can pretty much give or take. I do like the world. It's not what I expected. I did expect a far more pure steampunk experience, and that's possibly what I was looking for. But I really like what they've done, introducing magic and the fairy kingdom and dragons and all that into a steampunk world, and then merging them together is absolutely fascinating. There's a lot to love in here, and I think you could have a whole load of fun with swordplay, high adventure, and political intrigue in this strange world where fairies and lords and scientists and mad inventors all interact between real characters, between fictional characters, and between just fantasy creations. Absolutely fantastic idea. And sadly out of print, although you can get it on Drive-Thru RPG, and I'll try to link that in the description down below. So that was Castle Falkenstein, and that won the poll this week with some 27% of the vote, which is only the slimmest of slim leads ahead of the second place, Legend of the Five Rings, which came in on 26%. And it was very much tied throughout the week. Legend of the Five Rings was leading for the first few days. Castle Falkenstein crept ahead. The two were tied up until this very last night. And then Castle Falkenstein snuck ahead at the last minute. Which is great. It's a competitive race. It's exciting. Keeps us guessing. But I have to admit, it added a lot of stress to me, because I didn't know which game I was going to be looking up. So I've only had these past 24 hours to read up on Castle Falkenstein, which is not enough. There's a lot of background packed in here, there's a lot of interesting rules packed in here, and I certainly have missed a bunch. So, if you're a fan of Castle Falkenstein and you notice something that I either missed completely or failed to mention in the video, then please comment in the comments down below. Let us know some features of this great game. Let's start a conversation about things I missed, and in a couple of weeks' time I'll do a rules breakdown, because the rules are pretty interesting, and I will mention any things that have been commented on and bring attention to other elements of this game that I did forget to mention or didn't notice. Anyway, as I said, Legend of the Five Rings came second place on 26%. In third position was Cyberpunk, the first edition, the 2013 edition, which came in on 23%. In fourth place was the Star Wars role-playing game Edge of the Empire, which came in on 15%. And behind all of those, on 9%, was Against the Dark Master, which is the newer game, so probably doesn't match into retro RPG polls. It's actually younger than the channel is, but seemed really interesting. So it's sad not to win this time, but I do think it's a bit of weight off my back, because it is about 600 pages long. So if I'd only got 24 hours to cram on that, I really would have missed a lot of that. But anyway, as usual, they're all wiped out, but they will make reappearances in future polls. I don't know if I'll put them up against other viewer suggestions, or to stop me having to guess which one to research, to give me more time to research a new game. I might put it up against other things out of my collection. We shall see how it goes in the future, how I feel like it at the time. But anyway, they're all wiped out of the poll, and we're back to a Retro Adventures poll. Now, 2 of these are new entries, which I've never put in a poll before, and 3 of them are making reappearances, but all of them I would love to cover as always. So first up, we've got Last Rites for Call of Cthulhu. Now, this is a modern day Cthulhu adventure. I absolutely adore these. I've had a great time covering them, so I would love to cover it. I've only got a few more modern day Cthulhu adventures, but I'd like to work my way through all of them. Next up, we've got Imbalance of Power for the Faza Star Trek role-playing game from 1986. Now, I absolutely adore these adventures. Faza took Star Trek in their own direction because it's before Star Trek Next Generation came out, and they shaped the universe into perhaps a more workable one than the TV series managed later. Really interesting stuff they did, so it'd be brilliant to cover another adventure from it. After that, we've got Dr. No for the James Bond RPG from Victory Games from 1984. Now, covering spycraft adventures, covering top secret stuff recently, I've commented that I thought they should be more like James Bond. So it'd be interesting to cover something from James Bond and see how that RPG actually handled the spy genre. I'm absolutely fascinated to have a look if it wins. After that, we've got Scared Stiffs for the Ghostbusters role-playing game. Now, we've had fun covering the Ghostbusters role-playing game in the past, and this is my favourite of the 3 adventures that West End Games published for the original Ghostbusters, before it became Ghostbusters International. The original Ghostbusters game only had 3 adventures, and this is my favourite of them. And lastly, we've got Tales from the Ether for Space 1889. I love me some Games Designers Workshop. I love Space 1889. I've been looking at some stuff about it, the Victorian era and all that recently, with Castle Falkenstein being fresh in my head. I'd love to have a look at Space 1889, especially this adventure, which is actually 5 adventures set throughout the solar system. 1 on Earth, 1 on Mercury, 1 on Venus, 1 on Mars, and 1 on a space station. So it'd be fascinating to cover this steampunk Victorian era RPG after looking at Castle Falkenstein. But we shall see how it goes. What else have I been up to? Well, over on DriveThruRPG, I've been releasing some more character classes for 5th edition from different settings. Now this time I'm doing the Wild West. And once I work my way through that, I've got some pirate ones I plan. And then I'm going to be doing some science fiction ones. Because I've got my idea that not only should all of these eras be playable, but I've got an idea for a setting which will allow people to come together. And having players from each era, I think I'll be ending up with 6 or 7 different eras you'll be playable for this final setting, will be important. So I'm going to work my way through those over the next few weeks. And of course, Patreons of Laird or Librarian status get access to them through a shared Google Drive. So if you're interested in that, check the Patreon in the description down below. And over on RPGgamer.org, well, we're working our way through reviews of the Acolyte series. And I'm going to be moving on to the Knights of the Old Republic comics from the 2010s, based on the video game series, which came out in the mid-2005 era, I think it was, round about then. They created a series of comics based on those video games, which are in the Old Republic, but vastly different to the other Tales of the Jedi stuff that they'd done in the past. And I'm going to work my way through that series. That's probably going to take me up throughout the rest of the year, while covering the Acolyte and the other TV series as they come out, and statting all of those. But anyway, I've been wittering on for ages as usual, so thank you very much for watching. As always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.